the most advanced cameras on any iPhone. With redesigned speakers, this is the best iPhone we have ever created. This is iPhone 16.
My name's Dipprey. I have a YouTube channel. I make a ton of tech videos, and I also have made a ton of product renders. So those have been Apple. I made a Nintendo one, a couple of other ones, but for the most part, it slowly built itself as being its own Apple product render collection. And that's why I was super excited whenever I was invited to do this event, because I would love to share with y'all some of the tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. So if you do plan on making these product renders, you shouldn't have to do some of these mistakes that I made. Alright, so first of all, if we're copying Apple, like in a good way, right? There's nothing wrong with copying Apple or trying to create their style. It's important to know what about their ads make them special. Without a main attribute of something, it's really hard to copy it without it just looking like any other generic tech ad. Then after that, I will show you the inside of a project file for an upcoming iPhone render that I've been working on. So to start off, what makes Apple's ads special? Well, you may think it's the quality, the lighting, and the sound design. Well, that's all definitely part of that. That's all part of one thing in itself, and that is story. I know that's weird because story is sort of like a short film term or a cinematography term. You don't think of it in an ad, but if you pay attention to the ads that Apple makes, there's a good amount of story in there. I've even seen ads where they use small examples of character progression, but where the product itself is the character. It's really interesting because I mean this in the term of like a reveal, where you start off with a product where you don't know what it is, but then slowly it builds character throughout the course of a 30-second ad, which is tough to do in such a short period of time, but Apple pulls that off really well. And I think that's one of the biggest parts that separates their ads and their product renders from all the other big tech companies. Part of the story is Apple mainly focuses on making their ads really memorable. And that way, whenever you end the ad, you feel blown away, and it normally ends on the climax, right after the big reveal of the product. Then they're gonna slap you with the branding. They're gonna say the name of the product and the Apple logo right away. They don't want to draw it out too much because you want the feeling of like wanting more, of ending on a good note at the end of it. Before that, like during the ad itself, anticipation is a huge part of the flow of the ad when it comes to lighting, music, and view. Just in a second, I'm going to show you my favorite ad that Apple's made for it's the reveal for the iPhone 11, and I want you to pay attention to how the lighting, music, and view changes throughout the course of the product render. That is the iPhone 11 reveal. And just to be clear, that was not fan-made. That is an official Apple ad. But the other one I showed you earlier and some others I'll show you in a little bit are fan-made. This is the only official ad that I'll show, unless I specify otherwise. Whenever looking at that ad, you can tell how the lighting, the view, and the music changed throughout the entire course of it. At the beginning, we have this murky lighting. It's really backlit. You can't quite tell what that is. You know it's shiny because it's reflecting off of its own wallpaper, but it's really hard to even tell what you're looking at or what the changes are to the previous iPhone, or even that it's an iPhone in the first place. The view also changes. You could see it's really tight. We don't quite know what we're looking at. By the end of the ad, it's blatantly obvious that we're looking at an iPhone. It's right in the middle of the frame, and you can see the entire thing. Same thing with the music. It starts off really calm and mysterious, and by the end of it, you get whistling. It's all hype, and it's one of those feel-good ads. That is what I mean by anticipation and story, is that like stuff is slowly progressing throughout the ad. And once they show you that, they want to put their branding in your face as fast as possible. So that's why they'll hit you with iPhone 11. And this is a big part of Apple, is staying on brand. It's really important that they stay on brand, and it's just nice, clean logo. It's something like Apple iPhone 11. That's very simple, easy to remember. You can go to a store And remember that, it's stuck in your head. It's a lot better than something like iPhone 18 Plus Pro Max Ultra 5G Mini Fold SE Lite Fan Edition, the North America variant. This is something that we don't want because it's not as memorable as something as simple as the iPhone 11. When it comes to animation, it's the movement of the products. They use ease out animation a lot, so quick movements that start off harsh and then fade out slowly. That basically exaggerates the ending smoothness because that's the part that you look at versus the beginning that you don't quite notice because it catches you off guard. The only time I've seen them use ease in animation is whenever they're dealing with magnetic things such as a MagSafe case or an Apple Pencil. You can see whenever this sticks onto the iPad, it starts off slow and then snaps really fast. That's the only time they use ease out animation, and I highly suggest that's the only time you use ease out animation because it gets really easy to screw up an entire render by using the wrong kind of animation. Long story short, ease out animation, really dramatic curves, that'll get you the best stuff. I'm going to switch over my screen to my full screen, and that's that. And I will show you a little scene inside of Blender. Look at this. So this is for my latest render, the iPhone 17 Slim concept. Whenever you're modeling this, it's in three main parts. The rails is one, and then the top and the bottom. So I'll just give you a quick walkthrough of the exact steps to model this. You want to give it a little, like 2.25. First, you start off with a plane that you extrude. Normally, I would use a reference photo, right? But start off with a plane, and then from there, you just bevel stuff. I'm not going to use a reference just to save time, basically. And then make it as thick as you need. And you want to make sure that you're adding bevels around basically everything. So you could just use a bevel modifier. Get that like rounded look that they started doing with the iPhone 15. Am I using any additional plugins? I don't believe I am. Here's what I got if y'all want to screenshot this. I have Bool Tool. I don't know if I've custom Planet, but I'm not using that for this, obviously. Once you have that, then I like to come in here. You can separate the screen as an object just by separate selection, and then same thing down here. Make an inset. Like I said before, normally in regards to the reference photo, you can separate this and add your texture here. Texturing is another huge part of making these renders. You could see over here on my model, if it would start rendering, that'd be nice. There we go. You could see how we get like the shiny Apple logo and the glass around the cameras. This is probably the most frustrating part of making these concept renders, is getting the textures to look right. I have to change the textures every time I like shift angles and I make a new shot. The textures are a little bit different. The glass is a little bit less see-through depending on how much light is hitting it. I'll start off with glass on the lenses because this is a big part of my troubles in the past. It frustrated me a ton, but I figured out the best way to make glass for this specific use case for an iPhone lens. I just make metal and I make it fully metallic with a little bit of roughness and then bring down the alpha. So it's literally just see-through metal. What you get is nice reflections that don't take a ton of computational power because it doesn't need to like be changing the index of refraction or anything. Some of the textures, honestly, I get from Blender Kit, like this back of the phone. Okay, here's another thing. For the back of the phone, right? Let's say this is the back of the phone. The cameras are right here, right? This is going to be glass. And underneath it, you're gonna have this separate layer that's gonna go right underneath it, like right underneath it, and that's gonna be the color. So it's glass overlaid on top of the color, and that material, I call it matte. That's the color that you want to change if you want to change the color of the phone. So just as an example, if we come in here, there is one called main color, and if I switch this over to, okay, you know what? You can't tell because there's so much light hitting it. This will actually change the color of the phone itself under normal circumstances. Right now it's not, just because of the amount of light that's hitting it. Those are my basics to modeling an iPhone. Use a lot of booleans, just a ton of little stuff. It would be really hard to go over everything I've learned, and that's why if y'all have any specific questions that you want to put in the chat, I'd be glad to answer those, because it's kind of hard to like know what other people are confused with versus me. For the cameras, if we come in here, let me zoom in a little bit. It's these, I worked pretty hard to make these. It's like this. So it has these steps that come down like this. These are UV spheres that go on top. They have this really weird texture of a CD-ROM that was on Blender Kit, and that's something called polycarbonate, I believe. And that's actually the texture used for the camera lenses as well as CD-ROMs. Sometimes you got to use textures that don't quite feel like they fit, but long story short, you can end up using things that don't seem like they would work well together just because of elements in the way things are made. For the buttons, just like I'm gonna go through each part of the phone and give you like a little tip for each thing that I've learned. For the buttons, I didn't really do it here because this is just a quick shot. Something I like to do to add a little bit of depth is you add loop cuts. I'll just do this as an example for one button. You add a loop cut here, and then here you move this into the phone. Is that even the right way? Yeah, you move this into the phone and then you shrink it. And that's gonna add like this like empty space in there that you can kind of see. Like this compared to this, you can feel it going down into the phone more, especially if I put it on rendered view. I know it's kind of hard to see because I don't have this whole lighting setup thing. You gotta understand each shot takes about like an hour to make, not to render, just to like set up. It would be hard to show different shots and stuff. If y'all are super interested in that, I think I did a live stream where I just sat down and like made most of a model for like 3 hours. It's even hard to refer y'all to that because I've learned so much since doing that. Like so many different things, especially when it comes to the cameras. At a certain point in time, I was using just photos for the cameras just because they look good, and it was really hard to recreate that cool texture they have. If I go to iPhone 15 Pro, there's so many cool textures that are on here that are just really hard to replicate, especially when it comes to the cameras. Deep in here, bunch of stuff. The textures are tough, and I really don't know how Apple does it. Alright, if there's no other questions, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, first of all, answer questions as I see them. I'm going to show a couple more of my renders, and then I want to give shout outs to like some awesome channels you should go see that do really cool product animations and people. So you pop one here. I don't want to show a bunch of YouTube stuff. I should just do, that didn't work either. Alright, here's my newest one. That's just kind of a good example because you saw what the model looked like beforehand. Once you add lighting and you render out and cycles and everything, you edit it and everything, then that's what a finished product might look like. Next we'll ask, do you come up with the animations as you go, or do you plan everything ahead of time? Okay, so most of the time I have like certain points. I have sort of a format. There's always a hero shot at the end. Most of the time I will just draw a picture on paper, on actual paper, for each frame. I normally have about 10 shots per video, so that's just 10 pictures. Not super hard, the phone doesn't need to be detailed, but just something that shows the lighting with like gradient maybe, and which direction the phone is moving. So, Animating ask, how do I get light to move on the edge? You can see right here, it kind of moves around the edge of the phone. And this is one of my favorite shots actually. And I will be glad to pop back over here and show y'all exactly how you do that. Let's say that we are using this phone over here. Basically, you're just gonna backlight it, but you can see, look, you see how complicated this lighting setup is? I used to be afraid to like use this many lights. Like it might be kind of hard to see for y'all. Let me just do this so they're all orange. These are all the different lights in this scene just to get this shot that looks like soft lighting, but it's quite the opposite. Because here's the thing. On certain materials, because this is looking straight down, you can't see this. right? Like this edge, it just looks flat, just looks like the cameras are right on there. Because of that, you need to use lighting to your advantage. In every little corner and every crevice that you actually want to see, it needs to be lit like different from everything else. That way it's actually possible to see. That would probably be my biggest tip. I had so much struggling with when I was getting started, because I thought it was supposed to have like 3-point lighting or like just one really good light, and I didn't know where they put their lights. The answer is you put your lights all over. You really want to show off every single detail of the phone. It might be kind of hard to understand what I'm saying, but don't be afraid to add lights, whether they're little lights or big lights, wherever you want. Just like, I'm not saying the more the merrier, but lights are not going to hurt. It's basically like making your own custom HDRI that's perfect. Like the phone, you just add a point light. You can use area lights. I used to use area lights. Point lights are just easier, because if there's one subject, you really don't need a light. You can have a point light. There's no point not having a point light. So you're gonna make these things really, really bright, because from the back, it is hard to see. We'll turn off this collection right here. Shoot, why is that in there? Just throw that in there. If you look at it from above, you can see we got this nice edge light. If you wanted an animation that like goes here and then it wraps around the phone kind of, then you could just duplicate the light, move it up here, and then you can set position keyframes for both of those, and then you can go back in time or wherever your video starts and just do the opposite. It in no ways doesn't need to be perfect. It's a light. It scatters. Light's never perfect. You get this. Now you could see, as we play this, that's the basic idea for getting lights that backlight the phone. And this is a big part of the character development, right? Because at first you can't tell what it is. It's almost like it's being drawn right in front of you. Exactly. Go with what works, not perfection. And I'm not saying that like in a lazy way. I'm saying you need to not be scared that something might not work. That's what being creative is all about. You can see here on this shot, I did the exact same thing on this actual phone, and we're just coming up and kind of revealing the phone as the light moves up. I did a new technique of modeling because I watched a tutorial, and basically this phone was modeled a little bit different, a lot different actually. On this one, the entire midsection of the phone is just one big it's one big piece. Like this is an object that I used booleans and everything, that way the lenses can slide down in there. I'm telling you, maybe I should be the first one to do this. I just want a really good YouTube video that goes in depth talking about how to make iPhone cameras in Blender. It is such a complicated task. For the 2 or 3 circles on the back of the phone, it is so complicated and it takes up so much time to get them to look right. It is unbelievable. And unfortunately, no one's made a tutorial about this. And I don't really make Blender tutorials. It's not my thing, but I might have to, if I figure it out, of course. I would love to speak with the person called Ian Zelbo. I believe they're on the server. He makes some of the best renders I've ever seen, and just hats off to him. Do you use any light masking tools? Light groups. Okay, so the only light group kind of thing I do is on the Apple logo, which I don't even have on here yet because it's a brand new model. On the Apple logo, I disable shadows, and that's because it's its own plane that's raised above the back surface of the phone. So it's important that you don't have shadows being cast down onto the back of the phone, because that's hard to see. But other than that, not really. It's all one pass for the most part. Quick render settings. I do noise threshold 0.01. I do 30 frames a second. That's important. Make sure you're on 30 frames a second, 1920 by 1080. Max sample 600. I also normally do a time limit of like 40 seconds, but of course that's going to vary depending on how fast your computer is. This is not advice. This is just sharing what my render settings are. If you wanted to try to just learn from what I showed you. Yeah, I like making it feel like a photo stage, so I don't do light groups. Exactly. I go for more like a material-based approach. I know Apple does it differently though. It's so hard to explain though, because they use all these techniques that wouldn't really be realistic in real life in order to make the phone look more realistic. For instance, I saw a shot of an iPhone that's being lit from this side, but the lenses have specular highlights on the opposite side, which wouldn't make sense realistically, but whenever you think about it, it looks a lot better. And the photo itself was greatly improved by adding that weird altercation. Have you thought of making a more stylized version of these renders, or do you want to master the Apple style? I have. I was talking to Nate C yesterday. I'm gonna play one of his videos. He does these really stylized stuff, and I want to. It's not that I don't want to make my own style. It's just I like being able to control what I make. How do I put this? When it's Apple, I already can see what I want to make, and that way I can't change it in the future. It's already like a set out path that I can't tell myself that I was trying to do something different along the way. I can't be like, oh yeah, now I want to make a Samsung phone, and then try to lie to myself and say that I wanted to make a Samsung phone the entire time, or do it in like some different style or whatever. I could definitely do something that's not Apple, but I would want to go with an existing style. That way it's just more of a sense of control. I know it sounds reverse, like there's less control, but it's proving to myself that I can make a style that already exists, if that makes sense. I would like to master the Apple style. I would love to work on an actual Apple render someday. Alright, check out this ad. This is by Nate C. He's egg something on the server. Amazing work. That is wild. Everything, even the little animation at the end is like really, really cool. Yes, grade A, triple A stuff, bro. How do I pick the shots? Okay, so I really, really base it on what I was talking about at the beginning, the like character progression almost being revealed. I'll normally start at the beginning. I'll do like 3 shots of the phone being revealed, just like light wrapping around stuff. You can't tell what it is, it's just random stuff. And I'll do the ending shots where the phone is flipping and it's like actually revealed. I go in and do fillers in between, because all the fillers are roughly the same. They're like kind of revealed, not really. But it's really important to not fully reveal the entire product until the very end. That way you can put the branding right over it, and it gets that sense of like wanting more, which could be taken out by buying the product itself. Yeah, exactly. You don't want the full shot to be too long. I noticed in the new Pixel 9 Fold, they did this. We barely get a glimpse of the phone. It's just this really, really short render that Pixel did as a teaser for their Pixel Fold. That's it. Zooms out and it's gone. So I'm not saying to go that short. That's like really short, and I know it's a teaser, but just don't show it for too long, because the more you show it, the more it like devalues that frame. I made that mistake in the past, but just be cautious with the way that you lay out your shots. I feel the main difference between Apple and Google is Apple likes to do feature shots of specific aspects. Yeah, Google does do that a lot. I really, really like Google's renders. I really like their style as well. This presentation wasn't really about the best style, it was just about Apple's style. And I might do one in the future about like the Microsoft style or something if I get really into that. I'm gonna just keep answering questions, and if it slows down, then it's over, and I'll be in VC, and I'll be glad to talk to anyone else who has any other questions. Google is a lot more bright, like they just show you everything, whereas Apple's secretive, and that's kind of a superpower, is I'm able to hide my mistakes by backlighting them. I think it's good to try out other styles too. Kind of a challenge, but it's good to practice and see how flexible you can be. I agree. It's just the backlighting really, really helps hide all my errors, and slowly as I fix like weird topology issues and stuff I have, and like figure out specific problems and how to model those differently, then I'll be able to fix those, and therefore like show off more of the phone itself versus just the hero shot. So I would love to talk to Ian Zelbo, because clearly he knows. I have many questions for him, and if he would answer me, that would change a lot of things. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like or maybe even subscribe. And if you did enjoy this video, then you probably like this one. It's the previous event that was on this Discord server. Peace.